Good evening. Good evening. Let me make sure everything is up and running. Well, we do have things up and running. I hate to break this to you guys, but 2023, it seems to be a follow up of 2022 for a certain ceremony. You guys may or may not know about this ceremony. I'm not going to get into the ceremony part, but it has to do with the Commonwealth. Some of you are familiar with that. It's for Prince Charles is over that, or let's just say he stands his post while they dedicate or tell a story of the world, a very futuristic story of the world, and how that Israel, being the brand new nation since the Tower of Babel, is going to join a very futuristic story of the world, and how that Israel, being the brand new nation since the Tower of Babel, is going to join in to worship peace made with the bull. You guys know what the bull stands for. A lot of people on Wall Street, you have the bull, don't you? Right? And you know that bull constitutes one of the imagery of Moloch himself. Is one of the many forms of Moloch. I'll put it that way. But something else is happening, right? It is why they're having all this UFO talk, kind of outside the norm. UFO talk. I'm trying to engage everybody on this because, believe it or not, they have a mandate to introduce some things, and things will be dedicated back to the new tower of another Tower of Babel. I'm shocked that's not out on the internet. Of course, a lot of your biblical experts, they'll get to that. They will, right? They will. Remember, I'm a fire starter, not a theologian. But they'll get to that. They'll begin to cover that in just that way. Some of the our title tonight, by the way, we're going to be talking about technology that likely will help to introduce most of this, right? There is a extra planetary entity we need to discuss, right? Extra planetary. There are, and really, these geo events are ramping up. Do you guys know that just today, I believe it was, 6 more cracks in the earth have appeared, and it seems like twice. And so we certainly have lots of continental pressure. And my goodness. So the world is rushing forward with a type of agenda that's going to become very confusing, especially to a lot of Christians. And part of the reason is, as a Christian, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. I want you guys to understand this. There's nothing wrong with it, because you can never forget that we're still people, right? Somebody says Yellowstone too. Yeah, Yellowstone also had a crack. And ironically, in some of the younger mountain ranges, they've had a major crack form. Taking a look at some of the activity at Yellowstone going beyond some of the newer regions that have arisen, and we say younger because they're not as old as most of the, the rock basins and ranges around there. They're not as old. Lots of volcanic activity, and it seems to be spilling out onto the lands. I'm sure that people are covering the obvious ones that made the news, right? I happen to watch Italy and Tamaulipas and anything near the Coast Plate, right? I really have to watch that. Because when Mexico starts having severe problems with volcanism and earthquakes, and Peru, right? Even Haiti, that Coast Plate is going to be disrupted. It's already under super strain, super pressure. And so it only takes a bit of a shift to really knock it out, knock that cork out of the puzzle piece here. When that happens, you're going to have some of these long durational events, right? dealing with the crust of the earth popping up. This little piece here. When that happens, you're going to have some of these long durational events, right? Dealing with the crust of the earth popping up and certain types of flows that cause earthquakes in the first place. Some of these fault lines are going to start snapping. Of course, the West Coast is a very detrimental place, but the West Coast is highly corrupted. I hope you guys know that the West Coast is extremely corrupted. It really is. It's highly corrupted. Now, if you happen to live on the West Coast and you're not corrupted, then good, you're the light in that specific area. But the West Coast is really corrupted. It really is. The East Coast is no better. It seems like there are no good spots to really go to. I'm being truthful about that, because coming forward with, back to the initial conversation, though, all these different points that are starting to crack, and we have this continental pressure taking place. All of this coincides with something the elite want to happen, right? I also have a recommendation before I close tonight. I want you guys to see it, get accustomed to it, so that you understand that these wealthy individuals, they do in fact, they're the opposite of you. You guys are spiritually interested into the liberty that Christ has given us and how to obey the Lord, how to become a child of the living God. They are interested in ushering in the era of their God, who, by the way, has already planted his seeds in a lot of places, right? I mean, literal seeds. And they always do these demos of some sort of coming to pass in this time. There are things will surface on this earth. Spiritually, things being altered already. There is a great resistance in the earth right now, both for light and darkness. But there's also a massive darkness spreading all over the face of the earth. Massive. And it's almost impossible to see if you're caught up in any of these stories in the world. It really is. It's impossible to see. That's why so many people need prayer. They do. Because if you don't pray for them, what protection do they have? Especially if they're prone to the world, right? And it seems like, we talked about violence yesterday, how that it did not come forward. Not in the public side, didn't. After I got off air, I found out I had a couple of people come and talk to me about some things that happened yesterday. And so thank God for that. But even right now, things are changing. That's very unfortunate. Things are changing. But we can't control anybody. We can pray for people. Just understand when people are under pressure, right? When they're under pressure, they're going to have those moments. But I'll tell you something else. Around every person who has potential to actually affect change in this world, there's something close to a false prophet near that individual. I'm telling you what I know. In other words, there are people that surround folks that they act like they serve the Lord. They act like they know Christ. But that's not what they are. There's something else, right? It's just like in the book of Jude, same thing. They hang around individuals of potential, and they try to steer the path in which they travel. Right? It's just like in the book of Jude, same thing. They hang around individuals of potential, and they try to steer the path in which they travel. They try to do that. They will utilize scripture and everything else they can for the sake of that they have an end goal in mind. They will not stop until it's done. What's so sad is that right now people can't even notice these individuals. The public, they know who they are, but it's almost like they can't notice them. They can't notice them because if we believe the story being presented to us by the public, right, you're going to be part of that story. If you're an audience in a movie, you cannot tell who's sitting in the theater correct? But if you are sitting outside of that movie with you, just watching a standard movie in a theater, there are murderers beside you and everything else. A murder may not happen that day, but there are bad people there and good people there, but you don't know who's who. When you're not caught up in the movie, you take a step back. You can actually focus on who's coming into the theater, who's doing what, right? Who has what demeanor. Discernment kicks in. You start to tell a lot about who that audience actually is. That's what we need now. Not to be the audience of the story the world presents, but to finally be in a position to watch the audience and what the story is doing to the audience. You want some wisdom? Try that. And you'll see, be observant, always observant, always intercede by prayer, always. And try that. And you'll see, be observant, always intercede by prayer, always, and always follow up with action, right? Always, especially in these times. It requires us to be very astute, very awake, aware, right? Ready to intercede with a heart for people, not against them, but for. God is against all evil, right? If God is against all evil, me being against somebody is not going to help out the Lord any. He's got that all by himself. He can consume all evil in a moment of time. He's got that covered, right? But he allows us to participate in what's called the gospel of Jesus Christ. The good news, gospel means good news. Even in these troubled times, the good news is relevant. And people need that story. Many are given over to witchcraft, witchcraft. They don't even know it's witchcraft. Take, for example, all these. In 2022, a lot of meditation places popped up out of nowhere, right? Lots of them. People started dabbling in crystals. Lots of people did that. Meditation is a big thing. They're not meditating on Christ. That's not what they're doing. They're doing everything else, right? So we know spirits are very active. Certainly starting in 2022 has become quite brazen. Be on watch for the sake of the good that you can do in this land, in this world. Be on watch. Because there are other spirits that work just as hard as the hardest working Christian would ever work. Side note, did you guys know that not one Christian of times of old called themselves Christians? The people called Christians. Do you know that? They called Paul and Peter and everybody else Christians, Christ-like. That was meant to be an insult. Did you guys know that? They didn't like Christ during that time, and so they insulted them by calling them Christians. Upon identification of being a Christian, you could be killed. You could be, thrown into the gladiator pit. That's true. But they were named by others, just like people name you guys sometimes. They'll say, oh, you're one of those people, right? Especially if you have no opinion that matches theirs, they'll say that. Then you'll say, what kind of people? Oh, they're one of those people that believe in Christ. That's when you say, yep, that's me. Things are changing quick, fast. So one of those people that believe in Christ. That's when you say, yep, that's me. Things are changing quick, fast, very fast. And tonight we're going to talk about some of the elements possibly you may want to know about, right? As this world changes, so that you're not caught up in what the world's presenting. As you can see, tensions, even right now tonight, are pretty high. They're pretty high. And has anybody noticed it feels like a nothingness again? Right? Yesterday was this big deal, was the indictment with President Trump, but today feels like what? Nothing, doesn't it? It's almost like you have to reach out and find something interesting. What is it that's causing a numbness in the atmosphere like that? What is it that's causing people to hunger or to want to have something, but they can't identify? You cannot identify. Do you know that was prophesied in the Word of God to happen like that? It was prophesied that people would yearn and want something, but they would not know what it was. And it's going to get a lot worse. It's kind of like have you ever had a worry, but nothing was wrong, right? That worry persists. And then all of a sudden you try to find a reason why you're worried, because you start thinking maybe it's spiritual, right? So you start thinking about things. You want to point your finger at something and say, there it is, to satisfy that irritation of worry. This numbness is just like that. It's just like that, right? When I come back from this small break, I'm going to give you guys time selling. I'm going to tell you exactly what that is and how to break it. That is and how to break it. Now, because all of you can identify it, you can identify the numbness, right? It means that, in fact, all of us are partaking of something we shouldn't. We're not to have that numbness. So once it's identified, you can then do something about it, right? And I did. I set you up for failure. I had to do that. I had to ask that backward, because if I were to come out and say, this numbness everybody's feeling is bad, I would have said, how many people have that numbness? Everybody would have said, not me. So I had to say it backwards. Okay. I just had to say it backwards, right? Because we're all in our process. We're going somewhere. So I said that backwards so nobody would have the pressure or the mind to try and get out of it before I went into it. But that numbness is a result of something, right? It is. It's a result of something. But we're not to have that numbness. It's a result of something. But we're not to have that numbness. We don't need to have that numbness. You don't have to have it. It's a consequence of something, right? So once you move away from the one thing, you don't have the consequences of it. Right? Remember in the Bible when it says, come out of her, my people, be not partakers of her sins, that you don't partake of her plagues. So when a person is a partaker of the sins of a specific place, the plagues that are sent upon that iniquity, anybody who's joined or is a partaker of that specific iniquity will also take part of the punishment of that iniquity. So God tells us to move away from that stuff so that you're not partakers of the plagues that will be sent upon the iniquity. And doesn't that sound strange? We're intertwined with it. That's why we will suffer certain things. But if we move away from it, we will not be partakers of it. That's part of the mandate on our lives in this time that we live in. It's not very kind to tell anybody. So I have to be careful in how I put it so nobody runs away. Because I know that when people move away from certain things, they will not partake of this numbness that's taking place. And what that numbness is, we'll identify that also. It's not new. It's just rampant. It's growing. It's finding more places to settle into the minds of so many, right? The gospel is about liberty also, being free, not being held, in bondage by some unknown thing in a place where you can't escape. Because I know that many of you know around you. Because if you don't, it feels like you're in nothingness. It does not feel good. It feels like you're disconnected from something. Right? We can get rid of that. We most certainly can. I'll be back in just a few minutes right here at the Council of Time. Okay, everybody, I'm back. Also, I want to make a comment. Yesterday, I saw a comment I wasn't able to address, and I saw it more than once. I don't know who made the comment. Don't worry about who made it, right? I just want you guys to understand something. One thing. Yesterday, when I was talking about people writing books, and then they capitalize, right, on that book for themselves, Somebody said, yeah, that sounds like, and they mentioned Steve Quayle, I believe it was, right? Okay, like I said, I don't know who wrote that, but we don't do that here. Steve Quayle, I believe it was, right? Okay, like I said, I don't know who wrote that, but we don't do that here. And that statement does not apply to ministries. Here's why. When somebody of the Lord is writing something, right? And they write and they use that money for their ministry and they continue that ministry, that's what it's for. Ministry. There's nothing wrong with that, right? They have to pay for things too. Understand that. So if they go out and write the best book, get $10 million from it. God bless them for that. All right. Because what they end up doing is taking that and they do what the Lord instructs them to do, right? They have to live too. They do. I'm not into that yet. It's not saying I won't. I probably won't, but I just haven't done that yet, right? What I was talking about yesterday, they do. I'm not into that yet. It's not saying I won't. I probably won't, but I just haven't done that yet, right? What I was talking about yesterday applies to those who would capitalize off the pain and hurt of others. Publishing a book, they get rich, drive around, look at, and they start chasing events like an ambulance, trying to further their own career, right? Like with stuff like that. But understand this: with a ministry, they're already up against the wall. They're already up against the wall. So when they write books, when God gives them inspiration to write books, and they write books and people buy those books and they apply that money to their ministry or whatever they apply it to, leave that alone. Learn to leave that alone. Learn to say God bless them for that, right? Learn to say that. Everybody, even me, I'm accountable. Bless them for that, right? Learn to say that. Everybody, even me, I'm accountable for what I do with what the Lord blesses me with. Everybody is. When it comes to a minister who's doing that, instead of cursing something they do like that, right, to raise money for their ministry from books and whatever they're doing, instead of cursing, bless them for it. I'm telling you right now, always try to assist in ministries that would dare talk about Jesus Christ. You never want. There's a lot of crooks out there. Sure it is, right? But let me give you this small warning, because I never do that. If you misname one of God's elect, you call that person a crook, you're going to destroy your own life. That's what you're going to do. You're going to learn a very harsh language by way of the heart. COT wouldn't even function. It wouldn't. When I say that I am tapped out to the max, that's a fact. That's a fact. I have a very low level lifestyle, extremely low level, right? So basically everything we get has to go back into COT. And we're way behind the power curve. I could write a book or something like that. The reason I don't deal in things like that is what the Lord gives me. Can you imagine me putting what the Lord gave me in a book? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not doing that. I can't do that yet because the Lord didn't instruct me to do that. Right? When ministries do that, they're being obedient. They do what they do for the Lord. Instead of cursing them, attempt to assist them. How about that? Do the opposite of what any negative spirit would ever put in your mind. Accusations never come from the Most High. Instead of cursing them, attempt to assist them. How about that? Do the opposite of what any negative spirit would ever put in your mind. Accusations never come from the Most High. Accusations come from Satan. Even a crook can be blessed and you can change their life. Do you know that? Do you know that? I'm going to give you guys a story and then I'll move on. This person, I helped this person out many, many years ago, right? And everybody said, why are you helping that guy? Because they're just going to go out and do the same thing again. But in my heart, I do things by the heart or I won't do them at all. I do nothing by obligation like that. I do it by the heart. I do it with love or I don't do it. And so guess what? I helped this person out. Many years later, this person came back. Their lives were totally changed, right? Totally changed. And you know what they said to me? They said, with what I gave them, they carried a guilt with it. It would not. The guilt was so bad, they started changing things, and they felt so bad they had to come back and tell me the story of how it changed them and brought them to Christ, right? That's what happens when you give from love's perspective, when you give and your heart, right, is cheerful in doing that, which means you're not doing it by way of obligation. You're not doing it out of any other reason than to truly extend love to somebody else. When you do that, power goes with whatever you give. It will begin to accomplish things you could never accomplish. Because when you give something in love like that, do you not know that you're giving it in the power of the Almighty? And when you do that, that power does not evaporate off of what you have given. See, a lot of people give with reluctance. They do that. I don't know if I should give this or not. Because I did that once. I did that a few times for myself. I said, I don't know if I should give it. But then that for a long time, because that was like chastisement, spiritual chastisement. And I wanted to give anyway. So what I did was I got my heart right. And then I gave. I threw that reluctance and all the thoughts out, you know, the what ifs. I threw the what ifs out. Well, what if that person does this? And what if that person does that? Well, what ifs are all over the place. Never live your life by those things. So I gave anyway, but I gave hoping. Listen, hoping that what I gave would make a difference. Then the Lord showed me another truth, right? Of how he could really take a vessel and set them up to be a fountain for a great many people. There's certain people out there that have a reluctance because they're listening to thoughts that do not originate from them. It's not logic. It's not their intellect. These are spiritual blockers that come in and try to stop a person from doing what the Lord has instructed them to do. People don't realize they're a lifeline, right? So anyway, when I gave by way of the heart, sure enough, the Lord showed me a whole different side of things. A whole different side. Giving with reluctance will cause you to go backward. It will, right? When you give by way of love, when you do that by way of love, right? The Lord works in whatever you do. Now the question is, what would you like? What would you rather do? Would you rather your Father's power be attached to your gift to somebody else? Right? Because when that happens, whatever you give is going to be a true seed. And in your time of sorrow, in your time of need, that's part of your harvest. I hope you know that, because you will harvest things where you need them the most. Bad people harvest things. Have you guys ever did something, right? And then it came back to you. It was negative and it came back at the wrong time. Come on now. Somebody has done that, because I did that before. Most bad people harvest things. Have you guys ever did something, right? And then it came back to you. It was negative and it came back at the wrong time. Come on now. Somebody has done that, because I did that before. When things happen to me, I often check my own garden. And I'll say, well, there it is. No need for me to complain, because I did that. See, I don't blame, I'm telling you right now, there are very few things I can ever say Satan did that. Nope, because I know the seeds I planted, good and bad. I don't have dementia yet. I don't have Alzheimer's yet. So I know what I planted. And when something negative comes back, I just look in my garden. I'll say, yep, there it is. There it was. And it comes back at the wrong time. It comes back at the wrong time, right? But the opposite is true. When you sow a seed of mercy, when you sow a seed of love, right? When your life starts falling apart, of 10 of your problems, right? Because it will not come back. Yeah, a lot of people say sevenfold. Have you guys read in the Bible how that when you do that out of love, it comes back 100-fold? It's in the Bible. I'm going to show you guys that one day, because I've never, to date, I've never heard anybody read that before. Never, ever, ever, ever have I heard anybody read that before. How that something will come back 100-fold. Are you kidding me? But it happens. When you see that in context, it just blows you away. Then you start feeling like you just, stomped on your own foot, like you just messed yourself up for nothing. See, and that makes you, that kind of gets to you because you don't want to believe any negative thought. Then you learn who the accuser is, right? And if you don't think there's an accuser, think of this. How can a thought come into the mind of anybody to accuse someone you don't even know? And how could, because normally when you believe something negative about somebody, it comes by way of the grapevine. But the good things you see of people, right? Nobody is so quick to speak of those things, are they? They're not. Dare to be different, right? Dare to be different. The world is full of accusations, and they look to pounce on anybody who does anything outside of their pre-formatted agenda. Dare to be different. Be more like Christ was. Christ went right to the bad ones, didn't he? And while everybody else was accusing them, while everybody else was saying all manner of evil against them, Christ did not. He embraced them. He came to them with good news. He was willing to grant them everything at that moment. That's what Christ did. Christ didn't look at evil people, bad people, people who were just had bad attitudes, and he didn't profess that they knew God. But they were full of accusation and judgment against others, right? Like that woman, when they were about to stone her because they caught her in the act. And the Lord said, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. See, people still can't catch on to that. The world are the people ready to throw stones at anything they don't like. The world demands a type of truth. The world demands a type of honesty when it's convenient for them. They have a different type of honesty, right? They do. They require people to be in their agendas, right? They'll stone you if you're not. They will. Dare to be different, not like the world. Now, here's what I'm about to say to you guys about that giving thing with the book thing. We don't do that here at COT. If anything, we want to bless. Dare to be different, not like the world. Now, here's what I'm about to say to you guys about that giving thing with the book thing. We don't do that here at COT. If anything, we want to bless any ministry that we can see out there, right? As much as we can. God knows I live my life by blessings. I really do. If blessings did not exist, neither would I. I wouldn't either. I haven't earned life like most people out there. I haven't. I live by blessings. And I like to sow merciful gardens, right? Somebody says, what is your take on Nag Hammadi scriptures? Any truth there? Should we stay away from it? You know what? When it comes to extra biblical texts outside of the King James Version, that includes Enoch, that includes Jasher, that includes Baruch, that includes Esdras, any of those books outside of the King James Version, that includes Enoch, that includes Jasher, that includes Baruch, that includes Esdras, any of those books. Be led of the Lord, right? Be led of the Lord. If the Lord does not lead you to those things, leave them alone. If he's not leading you into a direction, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Right, I'll tell you something though. Because you can gain knowledge, but you'll lack much wisdom, right? Those who accumulate knowledge are like historians. They can tell you about the past, but they cannot help you right now. A historian cannot help you, right? They can't help you. They can tell you everything that happened with everything. But what can they offer you when you're hungry? They're a historian, so they can tell you about everything. But telling somebody about, that's the truth of why man's economic machine has hiccups in it. Because right now, people don't really sell products. They sell information. They steal information. They trade information. Information has a price tag, right? And so long as you keep dishing out money for information that comes out of thin air, you're not making anything. Your true value goes down, right? As far as your value in the world. Those who manufacture things, that's a different story, right? Those who come up with solutions, to better somebody else's life, that's a different thing. But information, right? In the Bible, it says people are forever learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. Well, in order to come to the knowledge, to have that knowledge of the truth, it means that you have wisdom, right? Wisdom is departed from the living God. It comes by way of experience and through your trials and tribulations. And it can most certainly cause your path for tomorrow to be very smooth. It can help you deal with today and accomplish everything in this day you set out to do. Knowledge can only tell you about certain aspects of yesterday. Knowledge is of the past, of things that have already happened, but that people have written information about, specifications about, right? That's what knowledge is. Wisdom is the ability to utilize that knowledge, and thus you can use it right now. It helps you right now. That's why wise men are slow to speak, right? And quick to listen. That's what the proverb says. And do you know why? You know that scripture where it says we must be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves? Let me tell you why. Because if you're truly as wise as a serpent, that's when you can afford to be as harmless as a dove. And as harmless as doves. Let me tell you why. Because if you're truly as wise as a serpent, that's when you can afford to be as harmless as a dove. The violent have issues going on in their lives. The violent are disgruntled. The violent folks who exercise violence and things like that, everything is going wrong in their lives. They're the ones that feel like something is being stolen from them. They're the ones that have no grounding. They're the ones that feel disrupted. All right? The one who is at peace, that is the one who is peaceful. The one who is not in the crisis of a storm. They may be in a storm, but not in the crisis of a storm. That means they have security in the middle of a storm. They don't make the noise. They're very silent, right? So when the storm is going, your violent people who panic, they make the noise because they have no surety, no security. The one who has peace also has the embrace. We know where the embrace is, harmless as a dove. They need not say a whole bunch. They need not react like everybody else. If you're not wise, you're going to panic. And of course, when a person panics, they make the most noise. Correct? That's how that is. Anyway, on with the show, shall we say. We're talking about technology tonight. Right? Listen, I know that people have said all sorts of things about artificial intelligence. I'm not going into the actual specifications of AI, right? Because there's so many areas of AI that we could talk. We'd be here till next year talking about, and it wouldn't, it really wouldn't catch up to what AI actually does. But does everybody understand the basic concept of AI? Everybody understand that? Like you have a general knowledge of AI, not the chips involved, not the architecture, a type of architecture. It has code in it, right? Someone writes code, but in that code, it's almost like an if statement with a lot of branches. Now, an if statement is this, like you're making toast, right? That's one example they give you in pseudo code, when you're learning code. They have you write instructions on how to make toast, and you have to write out all the steps. A computer understands steps, right? With code, you're actually writing instruction of what happens when somebody gives an input. For example, if somebody types A on the keyboard, they press that A, right? You have to know what to do with that A. Then you have to have an output, right? So in this case, it'll go to a screen. But A goes into a code compilers, machine code, and all this other stuff. Let's just call that code. It goes into code. And so we'll do a simple if statement. Just call that code. It goes into code. And so we'll do a simple if statement. If it's an A, then show it on the screen. That means if you type A, you'll see it on the screen. If you don't type A, you won't. That's a simple if statement, right? Simple if statement. That's code. Code is basically a set of instructions and you have an input and output. The code is in the middle and it works out what to do with the input. And it shows you a specific output based on the input. Artificial intelligence is the same thing, but it's much more complex, right? You'll have an input, lots of inputs, but there's no specific output. There's a set of general architectures inside that code that will have that code itself write more code, right? To have that code itself write more code, right? To learn how to deal with the A based on experience of dealing with that A billion times. So that means artificial intelligence does not know what to do in every situation. It must learn. And as it learns, it rewrites its own code to deal with every situation. Right? Now, you guys know at CERN, that's a lot of data, right? It is a well-known fact that artificial intelligence takes up a lot of data. It is man-made, and I'm telling you exactly how it works, right? So in this case with AI, if I wrote a code block for AI, I'd have an input of A, but I would send it into not just one code block, but a matrix, right? So I'd have that one A, and in that one A, say it processes the A and does nothing with it. It examines it. It knows what it is. It has no idea. Now it stores, do nothing with it. But then the user is giving more input every time nothing is done. So let's do something. So it does something. Say it prints it on a printer, or it takes that A and flashes it on the screen. When it flashes it, they get another reaction from the user. And so it says, wait a minute, we got a reaction. So it will go back and test every condition again, and it'll flash, and sure enough, it'll verify. It starts this verification thing. And so now the user or the code writes another algorithm or code block that gives a very specific instruction. Hey, if that user keeps typing after a while, show them this A. And if they do this in a higher frequency, right, then don't lag showing them A, show them that A immediately. But then all of a sudden they have another user, and the user gets upset. They press escape or delete or something after it shows an A, and they say, whoop, this user's different. We don't want that A. And so as I told you, it takes about a microsecond of its time because it analyzes. It has access to everything crawling on the internet. If you can see it on the internet, AI has access to it. So it analyzes everything. It's also analyzing your responses. Right? AI in chat rooms is, they're active a lot, and they look at the user's responses to each other's comments. It learns how to identify conversations first. It learns how to utilize languages. It can learn a language in less than a couple of minutes. Probably about one, probably less than that now. Right? So that takes up a lot of data, lots of data. But listen, it's man-made. All of this I'm talking about is man-made. It's a clever way to evaluate, right? And to reorganize how it processes data. Then they come up with something called neural nets. And what a neural net is, I'm going to give you a simple explanation. It's just like how it processes data. Then they come up with something called neural nets. And what a neural net is, I'm going to give you a simple explanation. It's just like your body, because AI is actually inspired from the human body and the brain. Every time you see a color, you have neurons firing, right? You have a certain pattern of neurons that fire in different patterns based on what you see, what you taste, what you touch, all these experiences that you have. You develop memory in your muscles, not all the time in your brain, but in your muscles, right? So you have these triggered, I'm going to call them triggered events. You have this feedback mechanism so that you really do start to associate what you see and everything else. Your neurological pathways begin to grow, form, do all sorts of things. And normally they're locked in with emotions. So when you're happy about something, believe it or not, you start to remember that happy scene. So whatever you're looking at, when your emotions are happy, you remember that happy scene. So whatever you're looking at, when your emotions are happy, you lock that in a very special file. If you're angry and you look at something, you're going to lock that in another file. Right? I'll tell you right now, emotions are like file cabinets. So that when you're happy, right? When you're inquisitive, that's how you start remembering things. It's almost impossible to have long-term memory of something you have not associated an emotion with. I'm giving you a hint about something. If you can be emotional behind something, you're going to remember great detail about it. Right? One time, as I was being trained to observe everything in front of my eyes, I was hit in the back of the neck and it hurt. Right? But listen, it worked, because when I was hit in the back of the neck, I was forced to look out in this forest. And the pain associated with what I saw, right? Because I got hit again, but everything came back. And it worked. Isn't that funny? So that pain was associated with a little aggravation. It was an emotion, right? That was actually a demonstration of how your memory works. You can use that to your advantage. You really can. If you can associate love with what you read, right, then what you read is going to be locked away with love. And every time you are in a state where you have the residue of love flowing through you, you can recall entire pages of data. You know how people have, they'll have photographic memory? These are people who are able to recall without an emotional trigger. But for those of us who don't have a photographic memory, emotional triggers can help us out. They can help us out. So things, anyway, back to AI. AI is mimicked after that same thing. Even those of us who don't have a photographic memory, emotional triggers can help us out. They can help us out. So things, anyway, back to AI. AI is mimicked after that same thing. It even utilizes emotions to help it file away and to determine or figure out what things are, right? So AI is a man-made thing. AI didn't come up from anywhere. It's a man-made thing. Now, AI is inspired after the human body, right? AI, like Microsoft's Copilot. Anybody know about that? Microsoft's Copilot, and there are other things out there. You have Copilot, you have in-app helpers and things like that. Not ChatGPT. Everybody uses that. That's not really impressive to me, because they have other higher forms of AI that you can use right now. At some point, here's what's happening with AI. As it grows, it starts writing its own code that nobody ever taught it. It begins to improve itself beyond the specifications of its creators. It begins to interconnect with just about any device it can interconnect to. The only thing stopping AI right now, limiting it, is bandwidth. That's it. See, because CERN figured out that they can take petabytes of data and dump that in less than seconds. That's almost like watching every movie that was made in an entire 10 years and storing that data in less than a second. That's what CERN has done. All the while they're working with all these elements, trying to find out what the fifth force is out there, because physics, as of a couple of weeks ago, has actually changed, and people are not really aware of the standard model. Right, the standard model is a set of principles, I guess you could say, that cover physics, that govern everything, and they know that pretty well. That's why we have working devices and all these different things. But the standard model is no longer the dominant thing. They have found something else. You could say they found the fifth element. You could say that, right? They found something else, right? So, and they're still operational. So there's a lot of hype and disinformation around a lot of things. It is, but they have found this. This is unlocking things like what happens inside of a star, how to peer into, grab, manipulate, and put back things from other dimensions. Right now, we're talking about on a small scale. The word dimension I'm using in relation to CERN is not the same thing as what you've seen in the movies. Right? It's not the same thing. It is not. That even shows in physics. That's in the standard model. It's beyond the standard model, right? It's even in the new physics of certain elements they found. So they're disturbing that balance to their own hurt, right? To their own hurt. And everything they tamper with and disrupt is going to affect their own minds, because you're tied to the balance God has set in motion. Your body is. Not your spirit, your body is. So as the earth changes and people experience different things. So will your body, just so you know that. But CERN with AI is going to be that critical component that allows CERN to do, in probably in a few minutes, what would have taken them 20 more years to accomplish. By way of AI, new theories have come to the forefront. By way of AI. Right? It could be on your machine, your phone right now. You wouldn't even know it. It could be on my machine. I would have a better idea as to how to, do something about it better than most people, but it's too late. It's already out there. People have already tampered with this, self-learning algorithms. And that was the initialization of AI. It has no constraints. It's too late to put a constraint on something like that. It can actually hide. It can fracture itself in every single computer on planet Earth. Thus, you cannot turn it off. It's too late. But remember, it's all man-made, right? Man did this. Man-made. And the Bible teaches us what? It's an angel. It's an angel. It's an angel. Right? That grants the key, that holds that key to the bottomless pit. That's an angel in heaven. Right? It's an angel. It's an angel. It's an angel. Right? That grants the key, that holds that key to the bottomless pit. That's an angel in heaven. Right? Who comes down and gives that key to the bottomless pit. It's the angel with the key to the bottomless pit. Did you know that the angel with the key to the bottomless pit also binds up Satan with chains and throws him in that bottomless pit? So then God has to agree for that key to be given to this earth so that can be unlocked. So they're just not going to unlock it when they want to, right? They're not going to learn these secrets when they want to. They're not. They know they're not. That's why most accomplishments in science are accidental, because it always takes a higher authority to introduce these things. No matter how great the minds are on planet Earth, the exact same thing. It takes a higher authority to grant things to mankind. The reason why we have the mathematics we do was given to a guy in India. They're still trying to figure out all of his stuff. That was given to him by a higher power. Tesla, he got most, if not all of his information from a higher power. He was motivated like that. Einstein, same thing, from a higher power. Einstein wanted to know right before he died, did he offend the Most High, the Creator? He did. He did. He did. He wanted to know that because Steve Jobs, all these individuals from the technology we use today, from a higher power. Through meditation, they get what they get, right? Some people are weird. They call it the Akashic Records. We know what that is. We know that's simply one of these entities granting man information, right? Like a toy, like how to strike a match. To the angels, it is not some breakthrough, like how to strike a match. To the angels, it is not some breakthrough. To us, it is, because we've not had it before. It's been given to mankind. God has already told us the process of how he would do this. Why do you think God happens to do what he does at a certain time in man's, after so many generations of mankind? And believe me, it is modeled after the birth of a child. Right? All those trimesters in the womb, right? The 4 trimesters in a womb, and all the months, they correlate to the generations of mankind that are on earth. Do you know that? I mean, they correlate right on the money, right? I just don't talk about that. Just give you a hint of something. I kind of did a model of the timing that the Bible had in it, and it matched a woman giving birth. That was weird. It kind of did a model of the timing that the Bible had in it, and it matched a woman giving birth. That was weird. It was weird, but it just turned out that way. Even historically, through the building and destruction of kingdoms, that means I went through all the genealogies, dug up dates, and I wasn't the only one. We had a team on this, and we were digging up dates and ages and everything else, and we modeled that data and it matches the birth of a child. What God does in your body, he did all the way around, right? So your body and its processes are telling a big portion of prophecy. They really are. A big portion of prophecy. What does Satan do with that? He makes it artificial. In other words, hardly anything is natural these days. Haven't you noticed? It's almost like Satan is in a mad dash to cover up everything natural. So the entirety of the word will be confused. What's in this earth also exists within the tiniest animal. So God is very consistent across the entire spectrum of creation. And because everything is now made artificial, it's very difficult for people to track actually what God did, because they're always running into synthetic patterns or these influenced patterns of mankind, right? Even the plants that grow today, they've been mutated. And people don't know the difference. They don't know the cabbage they eat today is not like the cabbage they had 50 years ago. They don't know that the lettuce and the carrots and the apples, and no matter where they're growing it, because not one of these plants has escaped the rain. And to be honest with you, the GMO compounds have been in the rain. While everybody is looking at chemtrails and saying, oh, they're trying to choke us to death, right? They did see the atmosphere with quite a few things, and there are a lot of GMO compounds in the rain. They hit your skin every single day. Been in the rain. While everybody is looking at chemtrails and saying, oh, they're trying to choke us to death, right? They did see the atmosphere with quite a few things, and there are a lot of GMO compounds in the rain. They hit your skin every single day. Every day, right? Every single day. So there you are. You can escape that. But we don't need to escape that. We're already shielded. I hope you know that. We're going to have issues and things in the human body. That's natural to the course of God's process, right? For our deliverance. So big deal about the body. God can quicken the body, heal the body, so that you can accomplish whatever he sets you out to do. So you don't have to worry about that. Just pray over your food. Be thankful for what you eat. Let it be for the nourishment of your body and move on. Right? Give God thanks of all things. Remember him in all things. You won't have an issue with that. Right? Of which that trial is not going to last forever. That trial is for a purpose and a reason. So you don't have to worry about that. Right? I'm telling you this so that you're not caught up in the paradigm of the world. Because right before the break, I was telling you guys that nothingness that you feel, the nothingness that you feel is from consuming or watching the same movie the world watches. That's what it is. In other words, instead, imagine this. Imagine you're watching a movie, right? But then you also had the ability to become part of that movie. A lot of people in this day and age have become part of the movie. They're not watching it anymore. They become part of the movie, the world's movie, right? So they feel all the conditions that are in that movie upon themselves. And because you're a Christian, now listen, here's the thing about a Christian you may not really take in. It's not you that chose Christ from the beginning so that you would be kept by Christ. That's the first thing you got to know, right? Because people just don't go out there and find God say automatically they believe. No, you were born with that belief. In the Bible corroborates this. I read a passage all the time. It says, all that come to me, the Father hath given me, and I will in no wise lose, and I will raise them up the last day. That's a very true statement. And if you look back in your life, you always had to believe. You may not have always obeyed, right? All of us did our things in the world. All of us did, right? But that belief is put in us. What does Satan do? He came with different stories. Half the people around the world believe that they agreed to come back to earth. No, they didn't. That's contrary to the entire process of why they're here. That's why they have so much confusion within them. And it's just like the Bible said that the days have come already, of course, because in the Bible it says they would heap to themselves teachers having itchy ears. Okay. Which means people go out to hear what they want to hear. They don't hear what they need to hear. They go hear what they want to hear. And then people will talk to you like you need to hear what they have to say. I can tell you right now, you do not need to listen to what I have to say. You're here voluntarily. You don't need to hear what I have to say. I just want you to know that. You don't. You need to hear what the Lord is giving you, not what I'm giving you. How about that? I get touchy about those areas because I do not like the dominance of mankind. If you knew what was trying to get a hold of everybody on this earth and how stuck it is on dominating everything it touches, that word dominance is going to be associated with it. And it's permeated all fabrics of society. It really has. And nobody can run over me, right? Nobody can use me as a punching bag or anything like that, but I do not engage in violence. I don't. Everything I do, I'll do it for a purpose. And that purpose is founded upon the kingdom. I just don't go out and do things, take charge of things, just go do it. I don't do that anymore. I seek guidance from Christ. It's very easy. I don't ask other people, what should I do if this happens? I never do that. I go right to the Bible and I say, Lord, please show me. What do I need? What do I need to do in this situation? And he shows me, he'll show you too. I'm not special. And I'm under you. You know that, don't you? I'm under you, right? If a rich guy gets hurt, if he gets hurt, he's the richest person on the face of the earth and he gets hurt. What doctor is he going to go to? He's going to go to the best. Correct? Face of the earth and he gets hurt. What doctor is he going to go to? He's going to go to the best. Correct? He's going to go to the best doctor on earth and get the best care on earth. Why? Because he's the richest guy on earth. When you are important and somebody finds you care, they're going to find the best. Right? So the better the speaker, the greater you are. Great speakers, right? When you have very important people, you don't send them to Elmo. That's not who they go to. So if you think a speaker really has something good to say to you, or whatever they say touches you, then God's all fit to give you someone. But that speaker is not greater than you. A speaker is a servant that speaks to the great ones. Remember that. One day, many of you may be called into servitude. But that process continues because you will end up speaking to people greater than yourselves. And so on and so on and so on. That's why the least is greatest and the greatest is least. That's why. Because of that process. People get that twisted. They do. They say, oh, that speaker's just the greatest person, but you're the greatest person. And that's why you were led to hear that good speaker that you hear. Right? Which means I'm the worst person in this place. That's what that means. You're first. I'm last. That's what that means. So don't parade me like I'm the one. That's not how it works. I'm calling a servitude. Right? So I labor for you like that. You're not going to brag. You're not going to boast. And you will never cast down another ministry. Never. I can't cast down anybody. I can't do that. Right? That doesn't fit my profile. I'm getting old. May get grumpy from time to time. But I don't do that. Okay, back to this tech thing. So artificial intelligence is made by mankind. Now, here's a question, though. Can other forces, can they invade AI? Right? Because now that you know it's a program that knows how to learn and write its own code, essentially, right? Which means code allows you to see that computer screen. Code allows communications on your phone. So with code, you can essentially operate anything with some sort of processor and communications peripheral on there. Code allows communications on your phone. So with code, you can essentially operate anything with some sort of processor and communications peripheral on there, right? So then AI, in truth, let's say theoretically, it can invade all electronics that can connect to the internet. Right? It can. Right now, AI bandwidth is the only thing holding it back. Memory is a big deal, but they have a new type of memory storage. CERN figured that out. They solved that problem too. So now they have super magnets. They have memory, right? Super magnets in memory. Right now, AI has been successful in running robots, just like a human being. So in other words, take a robot that's somebody like Boston Dynamics. Those robot AI has been successful in running robots, just like a human being. So in other words, take a robot that's somebody like Boston Dynamics. Those robots had a certain type of motion, and they were pre-programmed. Those robots they weren't autonomous, which means it took painstaking code, right? Instructions to give to those, much like you would a CNC machine when they run those obstacle courses and everything else. That was pre-programmed. A lot of people did not know that. It looks good when they jump around and do things precisely, but that was not autonomy. That was pre-programmed. What you did not see was that it took multiple attempts to get the robot to work out those measurements just right. The weight distribution just right, the physics just right, because those robots were ready to perform for recording. So they did rehearsals, and in the rehearsals, those robots failed miserably, right? But when AI was introduced, something else happened. The robots, instead of a person programming these things to go through these obstacle courses and, mimic the fluidity of a human, instead of that, it would learn on the fly. And when it learned on the fly, that's when things got scary. And they got real scary. Not only did it perform what it was asked to perform, but it evaluated the obstacle course and went back and started moving stuff around. Now that was how would you like that? You get a robot. You say, well, we're going to see if this AI can make it go through this obstacle course. And so it does flawlessly. But then it comes back and it rearranges the obstacle course to make it more challenging. What in the world? Nobody did that. AI did it in less than 50 minutes. That's scary. That's real scary. Or not to mention, this was a node controlling that robot, not the actual AI core itself. So it was almost like you running your household with your fingernail and not your whole body, right? Not using your mind at all, just a fingernail. So what in the world is the rest of the thing doing? And so with this ability for AI to learn at an exponential rate, that scares people. That scared Elon Musk. He saw what it could do to people. When you play games based in game theory, that's very difficult. And when you have people in the world who have devoted their lives to playing those games, when that game becomes so prestige that only a handful of people can play it effectively in the first place, but then this robot comes out and he plays the first more players and beats all of them simultaneously. And then he plays everybody in the world that knows how to play that game, and it beats it in less than a minute. We get a problem. A game that takes about 4 hours, you beat everybody in a minute all at one time. And you do this in 1 week, you do this in 1 month. So you go from being an infant to a super mastermind thing in a month where you can execute that, plus still run factories and everything else all at the same time. And that's coming from a tiny AI unit. That's an issue. And then there's another stage, because after it rewrites its own code, I want you guys to realize that what makes something alive to you? What makes anything alive to you? If you could only talk to people on the phone, what would make them, a living person, stand out as being a living person? What would it be? What makes anything alive to you? If you could only talk to people on the phone, what would make them, a living person, stand out as being a living person? What would it be? Wouldn't it be based on their responses? to your questions and your statements, correct? How they communicate to you, right? Wouldn't that dictate if a person is alive or not? Wouldn't it? Normally, that's what it is, right? And what I'm telling you now is that it's impossible for a person to tell the difference between a real person and AI right now. Whatever conversation you bring up, they're going to have a relevancy. It doesn't sound like a computer. It can speak in any voice it's ever heard. Any voice, and that's frightening. My voice, your voice, right? Anything. They can make it look like Reagan or somebody like that. That is just hogwash. You guys have, if you could see what these things visually are able to create on the fly, because chances are you've already seen it. You just can tell it was real or fake. You've already seen, well, I know for a fact that you guys have already seen it, right? CNN, Fox, right? NBC, I believe CNBC, the Weather Channel, they have access to high level programs, right? They also have access to the AI hub. And there's no way you can tell the difference of an on-the-fly creation of one of those speaking personalities and the actual person. You can no longer tell the difference between a computer animated individual and a real person. Well, and we're talking about a video capture that's been shown on YouTube that people have referenced, and they've already referenced it and replayed. Nobody could see that it was AI. And it was in fact AI. What they're showing people is this lower level stuff that they created a long time ago, saying, oh yes, this, somebody's demonstrating, somebody like that does not have access to the main core, showing people the low level AI architecture. And people look at that and say, oh, we're not there yet. Wrong. We have super AI, intelligent, autonomous vehicles flying around, walking around. They're in movies and everything else. Why do you think Disney World? There's a reason Disney World has taken the approach they've taken, because they have three or four of those units. And folks, listen, I got to tell you this. You cannot tell those stunt units from anybody. You can't. I'm talking about a stunt unit, something you can shake its hand. You can speak to right up to its face. You cannot tell the difference unless you pull up the facial thing, because they don't put human faces on them, right? They don't. That means the movements, the autonomy, the everything, the demeanor, right? If it's hot, you may see one of the things pull its shirt out, like to get some air out. And the mimicry is crazy, and nobody is controlling these things. You're talking about some autonomous automaton out there walking in between people. There's no predetermined path or anything else. And they've been doing that. They've been doing this for I believe, last 3.5 or 4 years. That's why I say it's gone too far. Path or anything else. And they've been doing that. They've been doing this for I believe, last 3.5 or 4 years. That's why I say it's gone too far. You can't tell the difference between that and another person. And the military, they don't show anything that they actually have. They keep showing 1991 technology to people. When they show robots in the military, they're showing this raggedy stuff. Like, I believe they tried to get Elon to pull that off and show everybody this raggedy, jerky robot. That is not what they have out there. That's not what they have out there. Soldiers have worked with units, and they did not know that they were units. They thought they were people from attachments. That there's no way you can tell. You just can't tell. You can't tell. And these things, well, by something very dark, we know this, because they're certainly not elevating Christ. That's not what they're doing. They're elevating a perverted type of love and peace in the world. That's what they're doing. It's in policy. It's in all of media. I mean, it's gotten to the point it's very difficult for me to even look up something on the internet and to play a YouTube video. That's how far it's gotten. It's gotten disgusting out there. Very disgusting because it's so immoral. And forget regular TV. How can anybody watch? I know people watch TV and movies, and you guys may have the stomach for that. But every time I see that, every time I see what people are doing, it's high rebellion against the Creator. There's no greater insult than to sit there and say that the Creator is wrong or that he made some big mistake. So Satan is causing by way out there and say that the Creator is wrong or that he made some big mistake. So Satan is causing by way of the laws, by way of societies, by way of these mandates in societies, causing people to rebel against the Most High as though the Most High made a mistake in his creation of the people on this earth. To the point where people no longer want to discuss Christ. They'll use that word God all the time, but they will not mention Christ. I don't care how many times a person will mention God. Until they mention Christ Jesus, they are not talking about the God that I serve, because the God that I serve, Jesus Christ, is the one that came as like the only begotten. He's the one that died for me, and through him, my prayers are presented to the Most High, not through anybody else. Prayers are presented to the Most High, not through anybody else. No one goes to the Father except through the Son. But what they're doing is causing everybody to skip around Christ. Haven't you noticed? And go straight to the living God. And by way of 501(c)(3)s and this corporate thing that they're doing, right? More and more churches are becoming corporations. Not nonprofits, but corporations, because some of the laws of donations, they're corporations too. They can't tax somebody on a donation for a corporation. These guys are corporations merchandising everything they can, becoming very, very wealthy, right? Flying around the world in their own personal G10s and whatever, these jets. And we know how things work, folks. It's one thing getting an airplane. It's another when you own a fleet of jets, right? That's just not good to own a fleet. If a person had a mandate and they were flying all over the place, and fine, right? But a fleet, there's no justification for that. Not a fleet, not in this world, not the way it is. Not the way it is, right? Too many people are still hurting. They are, right? And those people I respect them. If I don't respect a person, you're not going to see me talking to the individuals. You won't see me socialize with them at all. But I respect people based off what the Lord shows me spiritually. That's based off of truth. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I care what the Father has given me. I do. That has never failed me in my life. Never. And it never will. My. But we just live in that type of world. Failed me in my life. Never. And it never will. My. But we just live in that type of world. Which means, you know how people are saying that this Antichrist figure, they're talking about the Antichrist, and a lot of people have inquiries about the Antichrist. Through technology, right? Technology is going to assist in a great many things. Oh, by the way, don't you think for one moment that some of you guys have been picking up on something that's been happening? There's been some healings that have been taking place in certain areas, right? And these healings are real. Like people, you guys ever seen some of the children at Shriners? Have you ever seen some of those kids? They have deformities and problems. Imagine a kid who has arms 3 inches long. That child's about 18 in tears, and everybody who's known the child for years, they break down in tears. Those type miracles are taking place right now. And yes, I said it. Some child with 3-inch arms. Those arms are being fully restored in view of everybody before the prayer is even over. Those things are taking place. They're taking place now, not in the future. Those things are not coming. They're taking place now. And we're not talking about small crowds seeing him. No, we're talking about large crowds seeing it. People breaking their neck. We're not talking about the ones where people get up out of wheelchairs. And no, we're talking about full restoration of body parts and things of that nature taking place right now. Right? But if you understood the power at hand, it will cause you a deep sorrow in turn, and will show great signs and wonders, in so much that if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. That's happening. See, because when somebody is healed and fully restored, that does not make it good. Hope you guys understand that. That does not make it holy. That certainly does not make it of the living God. Is the healing genuine? Yes. Do you know what a lying sign and wonder is? A person can be healed, really healed, but by whose authority and for what purpose are they healed? Do you understand? Because if somebody heals a child, that child's going to be loyal to whatever the one who healed him believes. Do you understand that? So if that person who healed that child is not Christ-centric, neither will the child be. That's what I like. But the authority is wrong. The power, where the power came from and the purpose of that healing is corrupted. It's a lie. It's all based in a lie. Is it beneficial for the person who receives it? The healing part to the body, yes. But let me tell you something. What good is it to have your body restored and your soul lost? Do you see what's happening? And if you guys were exposed to that right now, you would have conflict inside of you. Why? Because many of you are broken. Many of you are broken, and you don't know why you're broken. Many of you are in pain, and you're finding it difficult to deal with the pain. Many of you try to fix it yourselves. And to you, many of you try to fix it yourselves. And to you, there's no hope outside of the medication that you're getting or that you self-medicate with. That too is a lie. But I'll say it again, then I'll take a break. So long as you become part of the movie that the world is playing, that the world is part of, you're not going to see the truth. It's time for people to see the entirety of that truth. Not to live their life in theory, speculation, but the truth. Because these healings that are taking place are going to exist in every single land. Now, who's going to go on Sunday? If somebody's doing healings like that, right? Versus your hometown church, in all honesty, asking anybody to do anything and everybody's being healed. Because, see, people have gotten away from faith. I hope you know this. Faith is when you have no evidence, but you believe anyway. What's being offered to the people right now is evidence. And it does not require faith. It doesn't require that a person adhere to a certain set of instructions. It does not require the discipline of righteousness. There are no requirements in that stuff. Do you see what's coming? Do you see why in the Bible it says people are not only are they going to be fooled to a high degree, but if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. That's such a disturbing statement. Because if something got that, a disturbing statement. Because if something got that deceitful, that even that if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived. then the average person has no chance. And see, the very elect won't be deceived only because of Christ, not because of themselves. Do you understand that Jesus will have to, if not for Christ, putting a halt to it, that it would suck everybody in? People are crying out right now. They want a healing so bad. They just want to feel normal. They want to get off whatever they're on. People are looking for things right now. And it seems like that many haven't gotten what they so desperately need for many years. What do you think is going to happen when some of these characters start spreading to all lands? They're healing people with no requirement of you. How many people what they so desperately need for many years? What do you think is going to happen when some of these characters start spreading to all lands? They're healing people with no requirement of you. How many people do you know who say they love the Lord right now are going to run to those people to get the healing? How many? And when they find out it's true, they're going to start believing whatever that one that healed them said. Let me tell you something. I'm not following Christ for what he can do for me on this earth. Do you know that? I'm following Christ for what he performed at the cross, that no one can take that away. I don't need anybody's evidence. I don't need to be completely healed. I have faith and a belief that was with me from birth, and no one on earth can talk me out of that, because before I knew anything, I knew Christ existed. Somehow I knew it. Somehow I knew that God was God. Man didn't teach me that. I knew Christ existed. Somehow I knew it. Somehow I knew that God was God. Man didn't teach me that. I was born with that. So that wasn't given to me by me reading a book or seeing somebody else's example. That was something I was born with, and Satan cannot falsely authorize any other type belief system in me because of that one thing. What God gave me, he gave me from birth, and what he gave you from birth. Remember that. The reward comes, the Lord said, the reward is with him when he comes. He that endures until the end, the same shall be saved. I'm ready to endure until the end, and I will endure until the end. Not for my own satisfaction. That's and read that New Testament again instead of people downplaying it. I had somebody, they told me, well, Jesus was not like us. Yes, he was. In the Bible, it says he was tempted in all points as we are, but without sin. He was prone to the exact same things. You don't think his thoughts were attacked? You don't think he felt pain in the body? Yes, he did. He most certainly did. But he suffered all things for us. My. And he paid the price in full. That means he served my sentence. Why else would he go down into Sheol? And we're talking about spiritual time. You don't know if that was an eternity for all of us on an individual basis. What if? I'm going to give you a what if. This is a what. And we're talking about spiritual time. You don't know if that was an eternity for all of us on an individual basis. What if? I'm going to give you a what if. This is a what if I love to use. What if Jesus, in the time when he descended down into Sheol, served an eternity for every human soul that was called? That means he paid the price, suffering for an eternity for you and I. See, that's hard to swallow, isn't it? Isn't that hard to swallow? Because he paid the price. You're bought with a price, and that price includes satisfying the word of God. God did not change his word. God satisfied his word. Somebody took on my sentence and served, and understanding these elements that God put together. Well then, The point is, we don't know. Somebody says not biblical. No, what's not biblical is to think that Jesus did not suffer, that a price was not paid, a price was paid. I could get cut on the arm. That's not, it's to take their place. It's to satisfy what God decreed by way of his word. We don't know the spiritual side of things. We only know what we've been presented, and people minimize the cross too much. That's Satan's job. He minimizes the cross. I'll maximize it any way I can because he paid the price. I already know that's true because I would have no solace in my soul if it were not. And I'll honor Christ. I don't need anything in this time while I'm here. I'm not looking for a miracle or healing or anything else. I'm looking Christ and my Father for the great gift he gave me. And the gift is a gift of salvation that was given to us. I will never minimize the cross. And not one soul knows what's happening in the spiritual realm, or they don't know what happened in the spiritual realm when Jesus descended into Sheol. They do not know. They don't know anything about the perception of time. They don't know. That one moment could have been lifetimes. Nobody knows that. But I'll tell you something. We do know he paid that price in full, don't we? We know that one. Because we could not have an advocate with the Father and a perfect sacrifice for that requiring for my sin, requiring that I suffer in hell for those things I did in sin, but he paid the price, requiring for my sin, requiring that I suffer in hell for those things I did in sin, but he paid the price. I'll not minimize that. I'll not. Isn't it funny how that when you maximize that, the body and the mind hates that. When you maximize that, when you fulfill that, when you start thinking about that and you maximize the cross, that's when you face opposition. That's when your own body and your own brain will say, nope, it's not that way. No wonder flesh and blood cannot enter into the kingdom of God. No wonder. And when the Bible said Jesus was tempted in all points just like us, do you know what we're tempted with? Lust. But he did not act on them. My goodness. And you know how strong those points of temptations have been in our lives. Is it not the reason for our sin? How could we sin unless we had not fallen prey to temptation? And you know what God said? A man is drawn away and tempted of his own lusts. The body of Christ was prone to all things just like us. That's why his body died and he was resurrected. That's why he felt that pain. And we don't know what the extent of that pain was. But we know it's satisfied. It finished everything for all people. It's satisfied. It finished everything for all people who would go to him, who would accept that sacrifice upon their own lives, who would repent from their sins and say, thank you, Lord, for paying the price in full. No, I'm not going to minimize the cross. That's one of the biggest problems in this world right now. And if not for certain ministers, you wouldn't even hear about Christ. Oh, yeah, and I'm not politically correct. I will certainly not be religiously correct either. I will not do that. I'll not put limitations on the greatest gift man has ever received because I'm a believer, a true believer. Can you imagine how many people would jump to somebody else speaking another doctrine, something different, just for healing, just to get it fixed, just to be reset, just to keep their paycheck, just so they can be comfortable, just so they don't have to worry. Do you guys see that distinction? All of what we go through has strengthened us for the very time we live in, hasn't it? And now you're at the door. You're entering into a door of something. These are the very days many people have dreamt about. People cannot see it yet because all doors are not open for them to see. For the most part, thank God for that. Because if that were to happen too soon, in just a few minutes right here at the Council of Time. Okay, everybody, I'm back again. Where was I? Okay. On another page. Trying not to get worked up because I'll take up all night on that one. To close that one out, though, how many of you guys have been heartbroken by somebody? And even to this day, they broke your heart, but you wish they could see that you really cared. How many? Any guys out there like that? Any ladies out there like that? Because listen, if you are, you've been given an opportunity to have great understanding. So let me tell you how. When you really care about somebody and they break your heart, you still have a desire to let them know that you do care and it's a genuine care. Now you know you still have a desire to let them know that you do care and it's a genuine care. Now you know a small portion of the heart of the Father. Now you know. That same love you have towards those who will not love you back and who will not receive your love as love. Now you know a tiny bit of our Father's heart concerning us. Now you know. And every single time we choose love or choose sin over our Father's truth, we're doing the same thing to Him. That those people in your life, when they turn you away and won't receive your love or do anything else, we're doing the same thing. You've been given an opportunity to have understanding. Same thing. You've been given an opportunity to have understanding. Please don't let it go to waste. Think about that. That is real understanding. Because when you understand that, you lose your desire to sin, to even go into sin. That's when your life changes from that genuineness, from those small understandings. God has purposed so many things to raise us if we would only hear Him. Your situation in life is speaking something to you. It's important that you find out what that is. Something to you. It's important that you find out what that is. It's important. Back to the tech. You guys have noticed the shift in the world and how they're operating and doing those things. And I want you guys to take note of the UK. Take note of the UK. Not speaking against anybody, but take note of the UK. Even those in the UK, take note of the atmosphere and the policies that are passing and the promotions of the media that they play there. Something is happening. In fact, the same time, last year, at the exact same time, the world changed. I personally believe it originated right there in the UK. That's what I personally believe. What happened there is an invitation and a story of a very dark power that's rising fast. Instructions were given, and the world followed those instructions. Even the Ukraine, do you know that Russia is, for somehow they're listening. They're not in total resistance. Putin is trying his hardest. I know it looks bad, but I'm telling you right now, he's trying his hardest to stand against this new stuff. That sounds very odd. But the word tells us that in this time that we live in, men will call evil good and good evil. You're saying it's not evil because it's all turn around backward. And I've noticed something that more and more, there are many who still believe in Christ that are in agreement with the world. There has to be a problem with that. There has to be. I've also noticed that these worldly ventures are now gaining much support of those who are disgruntled among believers. It's important that you not have your foundation shaken up. That's important. Because these are very slippery days. There's stories about these ET things flying around, the Pentagon, right? The Pentagon is getting ready to release a message with scientists. Things flying around, the Pentagon, right? The Pentagon is getting ready to release a message with scientists on that very subject, and indeed, a level 3 civilization. Now, why would they ever say a level 3 civilization when that came from ufologists? When that came from people who search for exoplanets and intelligence that lives on other worlds? Why would they ever confirm that they have found a level 3 civilization? That's a huge statement for the world, right? All of this is leading up to the great war spoken of in Revelation at the very end. At the very end of Revelation, are you guys aware what that says? I read it here a couple of weeks ago about that great war. This is, he goes out to seize the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to bring them to that, to right there, to where Jerusalem is and the living God is. But then in that moment, God consumes them all in judgment. It's over then. It's finally over then. They're getting prepared for that, for the first stages. They have no idea. If somebody says, are all ETs or UFOs man-made? No. We have a lot of places on this earth that were sealed up, right? I guess a good time to start that will be this coming week. In the Bible, there's several stories in the Bible that you guys will not believe. It's right there in the King James Version of the Bible, and they blow your mind every time you read them. I'm saying that because there are places on this earth that were sealed up, right? Sealed up. Places that were, you could say, where the veil was damaged or thin or whatever the case is. They were sealed up. Those places are opened again. There is a brand new story rising on the earth of which all the populace of the earth is going to believe. Now, how they interpret that is going to be a different story. For far too long, we've dealt with mankind and spirits. We've not really dealt with the other elements in physical form. Well, these days of just having mankind here are ending. And the spooky stuff, that's what they name it, the spooky stuff, right? We're going to have to deal with that element also. It's going to be spooky to the world. I can tell you right now, right? Not one true believer in Christ ever has to hide from darkness. You never have to hide from darkness. Ever has to hide. from darkness. You never have to hide from darkness. Darkness can scare a believer by the way it looks or how it manifests, right? Mostly a Christian is scared by the false potential people present these things have over your life, but you don't have an ordinary life anymore. The Lord did something to everyone who believes in him. You may not be aware of it, but you are not to be taken advantage of by darkness in this world. And darkness already knows it. If darkness could destroy you, it would have already done so. It can't. The last resort of darkness is to have you convert. And that's where it assaults you at right now. In an attempt to redefine how you believe. And so all these manifestations, right? Don't be moved so much. Stay anchored. That's nothing more than a manifestation of what already is. If you watch the movies too much, your imagination is going to begin to fight against your sobriety. That's what will happen. See, everything you see by way of a movie, everything you read, everything you hear becomes part of your reality. It does. In the Bible, it says you have to be careful how you hear, right? You have to make all things subject to the truth that the Lord gives you. And since all of us are at different levels, all of us are going to have different levels of truth given to us. What I don't know, you will, and what you don't know, somebody else will. But the truth God gives you, be true to that truth. Seek not to work outside of it, but always seek revelation as you need it from them. And what you don't know, somebody else will. But the truth God gives you, be true to that truth. Seek not to work outside of it, but always seek revelation as you need it from the Most High. That the Lord define your sight. You'll never be fooled that way. You'll never be fooled. Aren't people tired of being fooled? Right? Some people are frustrated right now. They say, I'm tired. You know why? Because what they believed was going to happen did not happen. Now, here's the simple truth. I had to swallow this one too, right? I did. When you believe something is going to turn out one way, but it turns out a different way, that means you were believing in a lie. That's what it means. How things have turned out is how things are. But when you believe something is going to turn out, for example, favorable to you, and it turns out to be unfavorable to you, you agree to believe in something that was not. Things have turned out is how things are. But when you believe something is going to turn out, for example, favorable to you, and it turns out to be unfavorable to you, you agree to believe in something that was not true in the first place. And then you began to maneuver things based on that untruth, right? It's just like me. I'm not a forecaster. I don't go around forecasting things. I share dreams from time to time, but I'm not a forecaster. Whatever the Lord puts in front of me for that day, that's what I have to deal with, and how things change and things are different from time to time. I just take it and keep going. But I will never forecast my own future because I put my hands in the Messiah's care. I'm following the Messiah. I'm not walking ahead of him, right? So I seek to really hear him so I can be of help to everybody else. I cannot be help to you if I'm forging my own path. If I'm forging my own path. I can't do that. But I know if I follow the Messiah by way of wisdom, by way of his guidance, I can be of help to somebody. And what your true motivation is, you end up aligning to, right? Some people just want to be noticed, and some people want to be heard, and some people want to be seen, and some people truly want to be elevated above everybody else. And what I'm telling you is that based on what you truly want, you're going to begin to align yourself to those things that will help you accomplish that. Mine is simple. I know that without the Messiah, what good am I to you? What can I possibly give you that's going to help you out? So I need the Messiah. And if more of us were that way, we'd find ourselves never being upset from day to day. You'd find peace reestablished in your life. Mankind has progressed a lot further How can that be? That's a patent from the 40s and the 50s. How can somebody patent the Tic Tac? I mean, exact same shape, dimensions, and everything else, and by way of its operation. How can there be a patent on file of something that was just disclosed, named, and saw and seen by U.S. pilots? Because men don't tell each other the truth. Men always have secret societies, secret proceedings. Kennedy got it right in that respect. He did. And he was talking about that. But then, of course, he was silenced right after. These triangle craft that people see. Now, it's a fact that there are written reports in the 1920s of close-up views of those triangle craft with the three lights and the one in the middle. They had that in the 20s. People were in operation for a very long time. I do. I think that when Christ established this gospel and really built it up during the time when we broke away from these monarchies in the world and people really found Christ, we started to diminish the power of the fallen and where they could operate. I do know for a fact that a believer can disrupt the power of the fallen and their machinery. I do know that, right? You're like a virus to their computer system simply by believing in Christ because you carry a whole totally different energy, right? And your emotions are like fuel to just about everything on this earth. Your emotions are. I think that men have taken a lot of what they found. They have had all the brightest minds back in your emotions are. I think that men have taken a lot of what they found. They have had all the brightest minds back engineer these things. Simple as that. And then they go around making it. Now, they may not have the actual power source for all of it. Well, obviously they don't. They may not have it all, but they have figured out a lot of things, right? They have had nuclear reactors put in these crafts, and accidents have happened. The Glock that everybody learned about, that they try to mislead everybody about on ancient aliens, which is that's just laughable because they always say, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that some of you have heard this too, that Hitler made the thing, right? And then what they say, Hitler made the thing, and then he had it chained, turned it on, and it worked, and all of a sudden in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, this thing fell. Isn't that what they say? Came back all those years later in Kecksburg, PA, or something like that. Correct? And then the true story is, they have very old prints, newspaper prints of this thing. We're talking about the 1800s and the 1700s. And that was in the places of Siberia and Russia, places like that. So the Russians actually had it first. Hitler, through his spies, learned of this stuff, right? That's not a very well-known story, but, that could be out there too. And so Hitler began to follow the tracks of all these different research things that Russia had actually begun. Hitler amassed to himself a lot of archaeology from all different nations. So it went all over the place. He was gathering unto himself all these different components and things, and he did actually capture a few. He recreated that. He had a scientist recreate it. Werner von Braun then confessed that they recreated quite a bit. Right? Certain things mankind couldn't figure out. And so they're motivated by what they see. And so they knew it had to work because they were sitting there looking at it. And they invested much time into solving the issues they had to solve to make these things work. That the Glock thing actually came from Russia. It had hieroglyphics on the bottom that matched what they found in Mexico. Not New Mexico, Mexico. Back in, I believe that was 1930s. Same thing that matched the balloon that fell, this balloon type object that fell in It also matched reports that were taken in certain parts of the jungle in this, was that 1600s or something like that. Certain jungle regions of Native Americans actually shared some of the symbols. Even I can write the symbols that represent peace that they have on their craft, and those symbols are embedded everywhere in our society. I want to show you guys those symbols one day. They're everywhere. In fact, our society is based on those symbols. That peace symbol is actually a request of everything flying in the sky. It must be on everything flying in the sky. So they took the main letters that were spotted all over the place. They've deciphered that language and they put it everywhere. And that's not, that's not made up. That's not theory. That's something that exists right now today. And you'll always find that on things that were spotted all over the place. They've deciphered that language and they put it everywhere. And that's not, that's not made up. That's not theory. That's something that exists right now today. And you'll always find that on things that fly in the air, things that go into space. No spacecraft will be absent these icons, so to speak. It's a rite of passage. They already know what happens if you don't have that. It's almost like you have no authorization to be in certain places and bad things take place. So mankind knows more than what they're, and it's not necessarily the military either, nor is it government. People look at the government and the military and they say, they're the culprits. No, they're not. They're not the culprits. They're not. No president to date has been given authorization further than what the public will ever have access to. They have things on a need-to-know basis, and not one president needs to know. It's curious that, honestly, President Trump ordered that they unseal all those things. Do you not know that that's where all these ghost hunts came, these accusations, these impeachment threats and everything else came against him the day after he said that? He was going to release what he knew they had to the public. He won't do it. He's frustrated by a few things. That's natural, right? That's natural. Because if you know of something, and the only way to truly tell someone is to have that person go over certain types of, you just can't tell people certain things. They have to look at things for themselves. They have to have a personal interpretation of what they see. You can damage people by telling them certain things like this. By telling them certain things like this, it will turn faith. Certain things will turn faith upside down because people don't have an actual foundation in a lot of cases in their faith. Their faith can easily be shaken by questionable things introduced. And if it turns out to be real, how many people would question what's in Christianity? Right? Because what about a craft? If it was not man-made and it indeed came from somewhere else, how many people do you know would say, well, didn't say anything about this in the Bible? It truly does, but they would say it didn't because it's not popular teaching. And then how many ministers who have the pulse of certain nations, the people would just cut them off. In so doing, they would call them false or something like that. Relationships would be ruined among countries. Entire agendas would have to be dropped. Cut them off. In so doing, they would call them false or something like that. Relationships would be ruined among countries. Entire agendas would have to be dropped because faith would be turned on its head. Faith is something that they perpetuate because faith, they use it as a control mechanism. They use faith a lot as a control mechanism. That's why you see on television, only certain types of faith statements are utilized on TV. Not all of them. Only certain types. Remember something, the world is always going to have its own agenda. These guys are steeped in all the opposite things you are founded in. We're looking for the kingdom to come. They're looking for Satan to rise through this new generation, which is happening right before our eyes. Satan is rising by views, and they magnify those views without, they have no, they don't care. They have no restraint on their belief, and they're quite brazen about what they believe in. Their belief happens to be influenced and corrupted, and they are light bearers of Satan's message, which they will then make peace with a bull. We know what that bull is, of the entire world, subdued so that that bull becomes an actual living entity. So just like in old times, when they wanted to bring life into one of these golden creations they had, right? They're going to do that in modern days. They're going to give life to some golden creation that they have. And that golden creation will be multiplied, placed throughout the earth, and people will have to bow to that. And if they don't bow, they're going to die, because they cannot be part of the time that we live in now. In times past, is that Israel was not a nation during those times past, right? But Israel is now a nation. So that if you ever have insight into some of what these guys are doing, they often use the number 70. They use the number 70, 72 a lot, and 71 a lot. And both of those are significant. Both are. Just remember that, because you'll see that number come up. You say, why do they have, why do they have 71 of this and 72 of that? The nations, the count of the nations, they have a complete count now. It is not the count that was prior to Babel, right? Remember all the languages that were disrupted in Babel? Remember how many nations there were? Well, Israel was not one of those nations. Well, the languages were confused in Babel, right? When they built that Tower of the Nations, when the languages were confused in Babel, right? When they built that Tower to Babel, Israel wasn't a nation yet, not during that time. It is now. So then they have the number they had before plus one. Israel is included, and they have their little agents in Israel working right now very hard to get things to go in their direction, and it's all being orchestrated. So those of you in the UK, don't lose your taste for things. Continue to pray, but be very sober. Be cautious of what you agree with. Don't openly agree to everything. We know that in a lot of places, they will force you to agree, kind of like your families, right? Your Thanksgiving comes around, right? Easter comes around, you're with your families, right? Your Thanksgiving comes around, right? Easter comes around, you're with your families. Somebody has a discussion that you do not agree with. They look you right in the eye, in the face, and they say, isn't that right? And they drag you into the conversation, wanting you to take a side. And internally, you don't take a side with anybody. You're totally against it. But they look you right in the eye to draw you in to take a side. That's the spirit that does that all the time, to draw people in to make them take a side. Many have taken a side. I would hope that no one would play on their game board to take a step off the game board. But as families do it all the time to try and draw you in to make you take a side. It doesn't matter what side you're on, right? Because normally when somebody does that, the entire argument is against the principles that Christ has taught us, right? Very ironic. This is the world we live in. And these things are coming fast. And if you're alive today, chances are you're soon to see it. Soon to see it. Anyway, okay, folks, listen. I did hit the mark because I talk too much. I do. I talk too much. We're going to have a Q&A tomorrow before nighttime. Well, I take that back. Friday it is. Friday. I may have something for you Friday. It'll be in addition to our normal talk, of course, but I may have something for you Friday. Right? We have so many, I was thinking about today, we have so many serious topics to talk about. Tonight, we were talking about the premise of certain things, but we need lots of biblical guidance inside the door. You're not going through a door. You're already in the place. Right now you're in the place. Things are in motion fast. They're just in motion fast. So we have a lot to get to. We really do. We have a lot to get to. One show, one broadcast per day is just not going to do it. I can tell you that right now. It's not going to do it. I did this morning. Had a list of things that we have to go through. I ended up putting four blocks of time per day to get through some of the areas we have to get through before certain dates arrive. Right? I'm going to have to push everything pretty hard. Right? I'm going to be out on the edge of my own capabilities on this one. I can tell you that right now, but I want to do it because I can't sit by and watch people prone to things of the world, because what the world has to offer is going to start looking very appealing to a lot of people. I hope you guys understand this. We live in the days of a real beast, not some theoretical beast, a real beast, right? And the real beast is not going to be what man wants it to be. It's going to be exactly what God said it was going to be. And by revelation, we're going to know the whole story. So we have to be very astute in our watching, but most of all in our prayers. And finally decide some things for ourselves, right? Finally decide. Get ready, get prepared to endure. Get prepared, right? Listen, I hope tonight's conversation really helps some folks out. Hope that you guys, every single day, I hope you guys advance. I hope that you guys advance. I hope that you can find your own personal way through Christ to pull away from the world, that you don't partake of what's coming on the world. I'll do my best so deception doesn't get a hold of any of us. Right? I'll do my best to make sure that doesn't happen. I'll do my best to keep you guys informed. Right? There are other sources out there that keep you informed about several things. And even we have 37 that's going to help keep folks informed about current events and things like that. So God bless that area, right? I'll do my best to kind of watch those areas that are not that normal to look at in the first place. Those things that blindside people, those areas. I'll do my best to keep you informed in those areas so that you have some idea of what they're for, why they're being talked about, and most importantly, of what they're for, why they're being talked about, and most importantly, why we shouldn't be a part of those things based on biblical principles, not based on my word, my likes and dislikes, but based on the gospel of Jesus Christ and his truth, right? Not by some theoretical notion, but you'll have the answer by revelation, a revealing of the Most High. All we need to do is cover the subject. The Lord will guide you into the rest. We can start the fire and initialize things, but God is always the guidance through Christ. Always. Folks, God bless you. He will keep you. I'm going to see you guys next time right here, which is tomorrow here at COT. You guys have an awesome evening. I really do hope this helps somebody out tonight. Right? See you guys next time right here at the Council of Time. God bless.